Welcome back. This is Good Morning Kenya. My name is Vivian Dagwa, and today being a Tuesday, as I had mentioned earlier, it is Health Tuesday. It is a day where we get into matters health, and our topic of conversation today on our health segment is cerebral palsy. And I am joined by several people in studio today who are going to be helping us just get into understanding cerebral palsy. And joining us, beginning from my far end, let me begin with the far end. We have Dr. Wallace Kipleting, and Dr. Wallace is the General Practitioner, Nairobi County. He is a General Practitioner in Nairobi County. We also have Lucy Mbaire, who's in the middle. Lucy Mbaire is a parent of someone who is suffering from cerebral palsy. And then we also have Esther Maguta. Esther Maguta is a business lady and the board member, Cerebral Palsy of Kenya. So we are about to have a conversation on cerebral palsy and get deep into it. Now, if I may just begin by asking the doctor to let us know what exactly cerebral palsy is.
Thank you so much. Cerebral palsy is a terminology or a broad term, an umbrella term used to define conditions that affect movement and coordination in the body. Mm-hmm. It's usually caused by an injury or an insult to a young developing brain. It could be before birth, during birth, or immediately after birth. And this injury is usually a non-progressive or a non-progressive injury that causes these symptoms, difficulties in coordination and movement in the body. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. So that's just the brief definition of cerebral palsy.
Of cerebral palsy, yes. And what causes it.
And what causes
really.
it. Mm-hmm.
So what may be other... you know, you've mentioned the medical term of what causes it. Yes. Is there any other way that you can explain how cerebral palsy occurs? Okay.
Yes. In a simple way, cerebral palsy, it's a condition or it's an umbrella term. It's just a collection of difficulties in movement. If you see someone, the muscles are very rigid, that their joints cannot move as good as other people, or others even have impairment in speech or other body functions like basic senses like hearing, the cognition. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, to Lucy, you are a parent to, do we call them victims?
People living cerebral palsy.
People living with cerebral palsy. I'm sorry about that. So you're a parent to someone who lives with cerebral palsy. If you can just tell us a bit about your child, how old they are when you realize that they have cerebral palsy.
Thank you. I am a mother of a boy. Mm-hmm. And this condition I came to know much later, because during my pregnancy, I was okay throughout until now when I went into labor. Mm-hmm. That's the time when the complications started, because I started blood pressure. Mm-hmm. And then I was taken to theater, of which actually after the operation, I was told that the child didn't cry. Mm. And after that, we went home, stayed with the kid, not knowing that very moment when I was told it never, the child didn't cry, got the brain damage. Mm-hmm. Then we stayed. I could see the child was not normal, because when you play with that child, when you do something to that child, he was always on one position. Mm. No turning, no kicking, no what. Then much later, that is the time when now the doctors said, after attending the clinic, they said this child has got a problem, and this problem is called cerebral palsy, which actually, it is something strange, a strange name or a strange disease, but eventually, for my understanding, I was told ni ulemavu wa upungufu wa akili. This condition which would make the child not any movement. The position, when you put him on the bed, anakaa tu hivyo. So
how far later was that? How old was the child by then?
It was after 6 months. Okay. That's the time when I realized that my son had a condition. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. All right. We'll get into the symptoms, and the doctor will highlight that for us. But before we do that, maybe to you, Esther, you are the board member, Cerebral Palsy of Kenya. Tell us a bit about Cerebral Palsy of Kenya.
Cerebral Palsy Society of Kenya is a society. Our core objective as a society is advocacy, where we advocate for these parents and children. Like when it comes to bursaries, we try and get bursaries for them, because most of the time when we are given bursaries, they ask for a report form. We don't have report forms for our children. And we also, like any other children, we try and advocate for their medication, because their medications are usually very expensive. So what we do as a society is we try and find where they can get cheap medicine or how we can help them. We also do rehabilitation, that is counsel parents, do therapy for the children. And when it comes to parents, most of them are usually very stigmatized. I'm sure you know that some of them even lock the children in their houses because they don't want to remove them. So we try and encourage them to bring them to the society so that they can be rehabilitated there, given all what they need, especially therapy, because that is the key thing that they need. We also do awareness, where we go to churches, we do activations in churches, and we also do walks, you know, just to create awareness, because most people don't know about cerebral palsy. We also do activations in the community. We try and talk to the community so that they can embrace the children and the parents, so that the parents are not so stigmatized. And we also, for the awareness, we also resource for mobilization, because we need to find like we need to assist the parents get assistive devices like wheelchairs, which are usually very expensive. We help them, and especially we work with the government, the government helps us so much, because sometimes they facilitate these things like for mobility, the wheelchairs, because most of our children cannot walk, so they are usually confined on wheelchairs. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Back to you, Dr. Wallace. You know, when Lucy was telling us about how she got to know about the son's, you know, diagnosis rather of cerebral palsy, she mentioned that when he was born, at first, the child didn't cry. But that wasn't alarming really for her. Later on is when she found out that the kid is actually has cerebral palsy 6 months later. So probably if you can just take us through some of the symptoms from beginning. You said it can happen from pregnancy. So if you can just take us through the symptoms, how can someone know that probably their child might be having cerebral palsy?
Thank you so much. People or children born with or living with cerebral palsy, the best way or the easiest way to know that the child could be having this condition is looking at the developmental milestones. So developmental milestones are the various stages of development in a child. For instance, at six weeks, we expect a child to have a social smile. At some point, they're supposed to crawl, to stand with support, and then without support, or to start uttering a few words, like 2-syllable words or 3-syllable words. So if it reaches a point whereby you notice that a child is not doing what other children are doing at that age, then there's a high possibility that a child could develop cerebral palsy.
If I may just interject a bit still on that, you know, they say that every child grows at their own pace.
Yes.
So sometimes comparing the milestones of one child to the next is not really advised. So when exactly should it be alarming? You know, they say that some girls tend to mature faster, they grow faster than boys. So a 2-year-old, maybe a 2-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy, if you look at their milestones, sometimes they are a bit apart. So when is it really alarming for a parent? Okay,
usually it's true. The milestones may vary from one child to the other, depending on the genetics, the sex, and various aspects of their environment. But there's usually a specific time past which we expect the child to be, the growth to be in keeping with the rest of his or her age mates. Okay. So normally, if we expect a child to, by 6 months, the child should be sitting without support. So we shall give a grace period of probably 2 to 6 months. So if your child is, say, a year old and they're not able to sit, then that's there's a delay in the in his or her development. So then now we start having there's a high chance of them developing cerebral palsy later in life. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So these are just the early signs, symptoms of cerebral palsy. But later in life, there are physical symptoms. Like I mentioned, it depends on the extent of the cerebral palsy. It usually affects the limbs. So by limbs, I mean the arms, the legs, and also affects other functions of the body, like speech and cognition. Yeah. So you might find a child, maybe the hands are stiff. Yes. They're not able to stand, they're not able to walk, or if you feel that their muscle tone, the bulk of their muscles are low. Yes. So these are the main symptoms of cerebral palsy. Yeah. Yeah.
Can it start later on in life, or it just has to be at a particular period in time?
Okay. For cerebral palsy to occur, the insult needs to have happened around the time of birth. So before birth, immediately before birth, say weeks to hours before birth, during the process of delivery itself, and then after birth. So the insult can occur during this the perinatal period, but then the symptoms may occur much later. Yes. So yeah, it's true, you can have a late diagnosis of cerebral palsy even as late as 5 years after birth. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Can be as late as 5 years.
5 years, yes.
All right. Back to you, Lucy. You know, you got to know about your child's diagnosis at 6 months old. So from then on, like maybe what other symptoms were you able to pick from your son?
That, as the doctor has said, the low muscle tone and the saliva, dripping of saliva, not able to swallow. It was a challenge, a big challenge, because now you have this child. You don't know what to do with that child, how you can help. You don't know. So all the time you rush to your doctor, and our doctors actually to ask what next. It was a challenge, and it is a challenge even today.
Yeah. How old is your son now?
18.
Oh, 18 years old?
18 years, yes.
All right.
He will be celebrating his 18th year in November. Yes.
All right, we'll get back to you to just get to know how life, you know, got on from the time of diagnosis to the point where he's now 18 years, he's grown. Maybe to you, Esther, you know, why was there a need for you to start, or for this particular association to be started?
Well, for this society to be started is that we needed to work hand on hand with the parents. Incidentally, at the board, we are all parents of children with disability. I'm also a parent of a girl who is 18, will be 18 in December, on December 6th. So we needed to come together as parents to assist one another, because when a parent gets a child with disability, they isolate themselves and they're usually very stressed, and there's a lot of stigma. So for us to help one another, not them, because we also need help, we needed to come together as a society to help one another, and also to try and work on the challenges, because the challenges are many. And you know, on this journey, it is a journey of hope. You cannot walk alone. We need one another. So we needed to support one another. As much as we support them, they also support us, because they come up with ideas. And there are so many challenges when you have this kind of a child, because as a society, we have to keep on looking for funds, because ours is not an we don't have an incoming generation. We depend on donations. So what we do, we find donors to donate for us, so that we can assist our parents and also help them take care of the children, because at times it's very challenging, because the medicine are very expensive. And what happens when you get a child who has this condition, you're not able to work. So if you are working, you immediately stop working, so that you can take care of this child. At times we get people to help us, house helps, but they cannot do it as per se, you know. So you need to be there always for your child. So when we get to the society, what we do, we even call parents and we sit down and talk. We talk about our challenges, we talk of our daily needs, and that is when we involve our partners. We have partners who partner with us. There are people who care about us, and even the government. By the way, the government has been really supportive when it comes to these children. So what the government does, it offers what it can. So like for mobility, they give us the wheelchairs, and they also started a program called Inua Jamii, where most of the parents get 2,000 a month.
Okay. I'll ask you to hold your thought on that. We'll take a break, and then we'll come back to continue with that. Let's take a short break. Don't you go too far. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. And before we get back to Esther, who was explaining to us what the government is doing for this society, that is the Cerebral Palsy Society of Kenya, allow me to go back to Dr. Wallace. Dr. Wallace, you know, we've not really talked about the causes. What causes cerebral palsy really? What are the risk factors involved?
Okay. Thank you for the question. There are a variety of risk factors, or things that could cause cerebral palsy in a child later in his or her life. So I'd begin with the risk factors before birth. So these risk factors can be classified, can be put into two categories. The one maternal risk factors and fetal risk factors. So maternal risk factors are conditions that affect the mother, that could affect the child. So things like infections, trauma, or medical conditions such as thyroid diseases, or even a convulsive disorder in pregnancy can lead to the child developing cerebral palsy later. When it comes to the fetal risk factors, you can have congenital or congenital malformations, or conditions that a child is born with. It could be genetic, that can predispose them to cerebral palsy much later, or even things like hydrocephalus, which can cause brain injury before birth. And then during the process of delivery, there are other risk factors such as prolonged delivery. You can have instrumental delivery, use of things like forceps, that can cause brain injury during delivery. And then now after birth, we can have factors such as infections like meningitis early in infancy or in the neonatal period, that can cause brain injury. Also trauma to the child, say head trauma to the child during that period of infancy can also lead to cerebral palsy. Yeah, so those are the main things, the main risk factors that can lead to cerebral palsy much later in life.
Okay,
Yes.
those are the main causes of cerebral palsy.
Yes.
Maybe I can get, before I get back to you, Madam Esther, probably just to Lucy, you know, your child was diagnosed from the age of 6 months. He's now a big boy, he's 18 years old. If you can just give us a rough, you know, if you can just tell us how that has been from that time when he was 6 months old to the point where right now he's 18 years old. Just how has it been, you know, taking care of the child?
Okay, to start with, when I noticed, or I was told that the child is cerebral palsy, I could not believe it. Once I denied it, and I said no, it can't be like that. Okay, after some times, as we went on, I was hiding him. I could not go out because carrying a cerebral palsy child is very difficult because this child is stiff. So I would not like the public to see. Then after some times, then I noticed that, am I going to stay like this? No. Then gradually I started going with him to church. And by this time, we use matatus, whereby we are discriminated by the tout, that because the child cannot bed or do anything, is stiff. So entering the matatu and staying with your neighbor in the matatu, it was challenging. So even that one also kept me out, because now I would wonder, how do I go? Or what it was at the early stages, it was difficult until the time now I said we have a life to live. This child has a life like any other person, and somehow I got mad. Nobody would treat me as a person with a child of the kind. Now I would say I will enter it is traveling in the matatu, and even when we are going for clinic, I will say I'm coming in, and if you don't, I would look for the next traffic policeman who is around, and then tell him he has refused me to go to enter the matatu because of this child, and I need to go to point B. So it was challenging. And we went on, and what I would say here is that there is a growth in the milestone, growth, because eventually as this child was getting, growing, there was some achievement. And this achievement actually attracted me as well. So I would do more and more. And then I noticed that even therapy, taking him for therapy, it was helping him. Now the stiffness went off. He could sit on the seat with the support at the corner of the seat, and then a cutting board to make him straight. But all the same, we have gone through. Up to where he is now, is somebody now whom you can communicate kind of with his own creative sign language. I would, whatever signal he gives, I understand. And now he looks at me with gesture. Now he understands what I intend to do, and that one is because of being close to him. So he makes us happy.
That's beautiful to hear. And maybe to you, Esther, you know, she's talked about the fact that the stigma that is there, you know. So do children who live with cerebral palsy have a place to go to school to? Because I can imagine if the stigma is from, you know, just transportation, you know, them getting into a matatu and getting to the next place, are there schools out there that are specifically for children living with cerebral palsy, and do they go to school?
Yes, they do. We also have one at our place at CPSK. It is a daycare where we have a special teacher. They are taught, because these children understand. They understand everything, and their sight is okay. Their brains okay. Their brains are okay. They work, so they understand everything. We have special schools, but for the severe cases, we just need to keep them there. The special teacher works on them, like she will teach them what they understand, because they are all different. And we believe therapy begins in the house, like when the child is being prepared to go to school. That is already therapy. When you carry your child to the van, because we have 2 vans which operate, that is also therapy when you're taking her to the van. And then when she enters the van and the van starts moving, you know, she'll see the trees moving and cars moving, you know. She believes that everything is moving. That is also therapy. And then when she gets to CPSK, when she sees the others, that is also therapy. And then the last therapy is when it's done physically by the therapists. And then even staying there with the other children, interacting with them, it's also therapy for them. Yeah, and it helps them. Yeah.
So there's that school that you have as a society. Are there other schools? Do we have enough schools for persons
No,
living
we
with
don't
cerebral
have. We
palsy?
don't have enough schools, because you see, like these children, when they are toileting, they need a special toilet. So most of the government schools have a special unit, but okay, it helps some children who are not severe. But for the severe schools, because most of them sit down like we are sitting, tie them with belts, or we put them on wheelchairs, but we have special seats for them there. So most of the cases, even when we are going for functions with our children, we always carry mattresses, because they are not able to sit for a long time. Yeah.
So there's definitely need for the stakeholders involved to ensure that at least they're putting up more schools for children living with cerebral palsy, because as you say, they understand, they can learn, you know. All right, so back to you, Doc. Maybe how does it affect the coordination? You know, how does cerebral palsy affect the coordination of these children? She said that they understand, yes, they can be taught. So if you can just get us into that. For someone, maybe for a parent who's watching us and they feel like, okay, this child doesn't really know to go to school, because, you know, they see them as someone who wouldn't really get to learn. So if you can just tell us more about that.
Okay, thank you for that's a very important question. So I'll begin by saying most people, or most children living with cerebral palsy, their cognition or their intellect is not really impaired. Most of them their mental capacity is just as normal as the other people, only that they cannot express their intellect. So she stated, some children have difficulty swallowing, in movement. They can't do what normal people, or what people who don't have cerebral palsy can do. So their muscles cannot coordinate. For instance, a normal person, when you chew food, the brain sends a signal to your food pipe or esophagus that it's supposed to swallow, but now their muscles cannot really coordinate properly. So you feel most of them get choked, or they need a lot of assistance when doing these activities like eating, going to the toilet, because all that is just muscle coordination. Yes. So I'd like to tell parents of children living with cerebral palsy that there's nothing really wrong with your child. It's not a disease, it's a condition, and when they are taught well, or in a special way, they'll just have normal functions as the rest of their counterparts in school or at home. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there different types of cerebral palsy?
Yes, there are different types of cerebral palsy, depending on the nature of the insult, like I mentioned earlier. So it also depends on the limb, or the limbs that are affected. It could be half of the body that's affected, only the legs, only the arms. Yes. Yeah, so now depending on the nature of the insult, if the insult is in the higher part of the brain, we call it the cortex. We call it the spastic cerebral palsy. So this is a type of cerebral palsy that you find people living with it, their muscles are rigid. Yeah. So they're not flexible. Their joints are not flexible like their counterparts. And then when it affects a place of the brain we call the cerebellum, we get what we call the athetoid or dyskinetic cerebral palsy. It affects balance, so they cannot sit upright without support. They cannot stand. Yeah. So those two are the main types of the cerebral palsy. But you can have a mixed picture. You can have both the spastic and the dyskinetic one occurring at the same time. And then now, depending on the part of the body that's affected, you can have hemiplegic or diplegic. Yes, it can affect the left or the right part of the body. It can affect the upper arms, the upper limbs, or the lower limbs. Yeah, or it can affect both limbs, both the upper and lower limbs. Yes, so there are very many types of cerebral palsy.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Lucy, your child goes to school. He's been going to school.
Yes, CPSK.
Yeah.
It is very advantageous to us because when we take this, I take him there, I'm able now to move and look for their food. I move here and there, and they are safe. It's better to take my child to the unit, CPSK unit, than just leaving to anybody. Sorry to say, because they are caregivers who will take care for my child as I would take when I'm in the house. They feed them, they clean them. If it is the unit of the school, they are taught, especially now my son is doing beadwork. He can make a bead and he can draw with his hands. A lot of improvement because of the society. And he is safe. I know he is safe. He is picked in the morning and he's dropped in the evening. And you see that he is cheerful. So I can see him, he has improved.
Yeah.
Because like now on a Friday, when you put there are some clothes they put on a Friday, they know it is Friday day, and that day is for dancing through the TV. Yeah, the TV is put on. I normally go there to see what is happening, and I'm happy with the society. Cerebral Palsy Society of Kenya unit. Actually, it is helping us as parents because at least now we are able now to move out and do something. Before then, we were totally shut in the houses. Yeah.
Right. We'll get to actually share the contacts of Cerebral Palsy Society of Kenya because you're doing such a good job. So we'll share it so that if there's any parent or guardian who may need their kid to join or their child to join the society, they will be open to do that. But before we get to that, maybe Esther, what are some of the myths and misconceptions that you would love to speak against of people, the perceptions that people have of people living with cerebral palsy?
One of them is stigma. There's so much stigma around that scares the parents, and they end up locking the children in the house. Like our motto in CPSK is leave no child behind. So we try and encourage the parents to remove the children from the homes. Because these children need to interact with others. And if you hide the child in the house, you are not giving the child justice because he did not choose to be like that. So we would want, I personally would want to request the government to advocate on stigma, because not so many people knows about us and our children. and especially the community and the people around us. I realized even in churches, you go with your child in the church, you know, you'll attract a lot of attention because they don't know these children, they want to see them. A child is asking the mother, what's wrong with this child? She can't look at me because, you know, they have a problem with sight. So they have no coordination. Their eyes, you know, they always move their eyes up and down, you know. And also the fact that most parents cannot afford cars, so they travel in matatus. So they're usually stigmatized. Like the matatus will not carry them because they say, mtoto atatema mate kila mahali. You know, if you're sitting with somebody in a matatu, they don't want to sit near you. They're scared of their child because sometimes they might pull their hair, their wigs, you know, because they don't understand, yeah. And then so they'll get scared of you once you enter the matatu. And there's the makangas. Okay, there are some who are good and friendly. They'll help you carry the child, but not all of them understands, yeah? And also even when we go to hospitals, we are not even given priority. And these children of ours have no concentration. You will sit with your child there. Within 10 minutes, she loses concentration and she's all over, or she's screaming, you know? Even in banks, when we go to banks, we are not treated the way we are supposed to be treated. People need to understand that we have special children, and as much as we have special children, we are also special parents. We are also special parents. So they need to handle us with care, you know, and even help us when they can. Because sometimes if you see my child running, okay, there are some who run, there are some who crawl. You're supposed to help me handle this child, not just start complaining that this child is all over, this child is a nuisance, this child does not understand. And sometimes the mother is stressed. They will not even be able to handle their child. Yeah, but there are so many challenges that we need to discuss as a country. Yeah.
Maybe to you, Doc, you know, for the parents who get to hide their children, they don't let them out. Does this cause any effects, really? Because I'm imagining a child who's always locked in the house, maybe causing more harm, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a very important point, because you see, like they've mentioned, cerebral palsy causes a lot of stigma, and some parents tend to hide them. And you see, a child who has been hidden from the rest of the world, they're usually not well taken care of. They usually lie in bed throughout, because you see, they can't stand themselves, they can't sit, they can't walk around. So they tend to develop other complications, so such as bed sores, infections in their chests, like pneumonia, yeah, which really lowers their quality of life and even reduces their life expectancy. Yeah, so it's really not a good thing to hide people with cerebral palsy from the rest of the society.
Don't hide your child. There are societies that are ready to embrace you with your child just as they are. So instead of causing more harm to the child by keeping him locked in the house, just let him be out there, him or her be out there, because there are parents who are just like you, and maybe if you join such an association or society, then you will get to feel better, because you'll meet people who are like-minded and go through the same thing, and you can be able to support each other. Maybe back to you, Doc, what are the treatment options available?
Okay, it's important to note that there's no really definitive treatment for cerebral palsy. Once an insult or an injury to the brain has happened, there's nothing really much that can be done. So what usually happens is that people living with cerebral palsy are usually taken to various forms of therapy, like speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, which will help them adapt to various life situations, or give them ways in which they can interact with the environment. Yeah. So, for instance, speech therapy, as we've noted, people with CP tend to have difficulties in speech, be it receptive or expressive speech. So when they're taken to speech therapy, they're able to communicate. Some even communicate using sign language, which helps them to adapt or communicate well with other people. Yeah. So there's no medication that can be used to cure cerebral palsy. Only that we tend to take them through the various therapies and treat other conditions that come in as a result. For instance, if someone has a convulsive disorder or epilepsy as a result of cerebral palsy, we give them medications to treat now the epilepsy, yes, but not the cerebral palsy itself. Yeah.
All right. Maybe to you, Lucy, if you're okay with taking us through some of the treatment options that you've had to go through.
Okay, the most treatment for cerebral palsy child is therapy. Because through therapy, the body becomes flexible. And even this child accepts if he sees or does something, he accepts that something, and he becomes active. And that being active, you heal the chest. There's no congestion in the chest, so that pneumonia kind of, no. And again, feeding. There are some types of food we are told not to give, especially wheat. Anything that is done with wheat, salt, sugar, we try to avoid. But more or less because we cannot afford the actual food that you are supposed, we give what you can afford. And also taking this child out to see, maybe like going for Sunday service, like going where there are people who are playing, and watching all this, the child becomes excited, and then I think that way the brain actually becomes a bit active. What I would like to tell the parents with such children, accept that it happened. Bring out that child, even if it is outside your door. Let this child see the chicken run, the dog run, or people passing by. That one, it leaves this child thinking. Even if the child is not, because most of them, they don't speak, they are speechless. They are inside themselves, they have seen something, and then you give them that motivation of thinking inside themselves. We don't know what they are thinking, but they think. And I think that is mostly therapy is the vital thing for a cerebral palsy. Somebody, however big this person is going, because like now my child is 18 and he goes for therapy. Almost, especially in the unit, he goes every day. And that way I see him, he's not dull. So I would the parents of the kid, please, let's take the children out. Let's get the advice. And also, may I ask the government to mobilize the assistant chiefs and the chiefs to go indoors in their villages, because that's where the children are hidden. That is where these children are chained. Some of them are even kept under the bed with the mosquito net covering. Even if you go, you won't see. Apart from the children, the other children, they notice, and then they come, they tell you as a mother that kwa nyumba fulani there is a child who is under the bed. It is very sad. Get out your children, learn to know where you can get the help. Especially we as a family in the CPSK, we like everybody there, we are equal. Whether your child is dripping, whether your child is making noise, we don't care. We bring that child to be, we are one family. And we uplift one another with ideas and with thoughts and comfort, because we are all depressed, we are stressed. So you cannot say yours is more than the other. But when we meet there, we are together.
As we wind up, maybe Esther, could you kindly talk about the importance of that support system, and not just for the child living with cerebral palsy, but mainly for the caregivers, because sometimes we tend to forget the caregivers and they do a lot of work. You said you wouldn't even be able to go to work because it's a full-time job. So what's the importance of that support system to the caregiver?
Ours at CPSK is to ease the burden for parents. So we try and engage them in many things. First of all, when we keep their children there, we give them time to go and work. And so that they also socialize with the other people, so that they are not stressed. And also, as I was talking, I was saying about the government. They introduced the Inua Jamii, where they give each parent 2,000. We introduced most of our parents to that program. We registered them so that they can have something to look up to, especially when they think about diapers, because they are so expensive and they need to buy them. It is when you have a child with CP, you'd rather have the diaper than the food, you know, for decency. So we introduce them in those programs. And also I want to thank the government, because they also introduced the supply chain and involved us when they started the AGPO. AGPO means Access to Government Procurement Office. They gave us 30%. So they send their people from Treasury to our society to educate the parents that they can also supply as much as they are taking care of their children, and they have 30% for the persons living with disability. So when we talk to them, what we tell them is that the first thing is to accept. When you have a child with CP, accept the child is yours, embrace the child, love the child, because these children only understand the language of love. They don't understand anything else. You buy them good clothes, they will not understand. You take them to good places, they will not understand. But once you love them and embrace them, that is the only language they understand. So when we are talking to our parents, we try and encourage them to love the children, and we also encourage them to know that there's something they can do. They cannot just sit and wait. And I also want to speak to the churches. The churches are not friendly for our children. Most of them, they don't have ramps. So you cannot go to church with your child because there is no ramp. You cannot wheel the child to the church. And also there is no space for the wheelchair. So most of our children don't go to church. Our parents, we don't take our children to churches because there is no room for them. And they also need to hear the word of God. Because as much as they have the disability, they also understand and they know there's a God in heaven. There's a maker, the one who made them. So we would want to make them understand. And before we finish, I would want to talk about, I would want to talk, we have a World Cerebral Palsy coming on the 6th. We have a medical camp at our place. We are partnering with Langata Hospital. The theme is 1 million resources. And also, I don't want to forget to appreciate most of our partners, like the Ushirika Wema, the Minet, who has come up in a big way, the Rubies, and the CDSK. CDSK means Cheshire Disability Services of Kenya National Council, and the APDK, who have really been taking care of our children and been helping us. They have walked with us the journey, because it's a journey of hope.
Yeah, I can only imagine. All right, so for the contact details for anyone who would love to get to contact Cerebral Palsy Society of Kenya, if you're a parent out there and you need this society, if you know a parent who probably has a child living with cerebral palsy, you can connect them to Cerebral Palsy Society of Kenya, and their contact, the email is info@cpsk.co.ke, or you can find them on call. Their phone number is 0708 829 681. I will say that again, 0708 829 681. Thank you so much, Dr. Wallace. Thank you so much, Lucy. And thank you so much, Esther, for joining us, for agreeing to come and talk openly about cerebral palsy. This is where we end this particular segment, that is the health segment. We will be heading straight to radio, whereby we'll be joining my colleague over there. But before we get to that, weather updates.